A message from my parents arrived in a group chat. We think it's best you step away for now. My Aunt Clara reacted with a thumbs up. I replied, understood. I'll respect that and step away from the family fund too. That night, I closed my contributions. At 3:11 a.m., my phone started buzzing. By sunrise, there were 89 missed calls. My father left a voicemail. What happened? The bank flagged everything. I just replied, I'm honoring your decision. That was before they realized everything else I had been quietly managing. The message, we think it's best you step away for now, was in a group chat with my parents, my Aunt Clara, and my Uncle John, who rarely contributed. The message arrived at 7:42 p.m. on a Thursday. I was reheating leftover curry when I saw it. We've discussed it, and we think it's best if you step away from the family for now. Stephanie needs space. We all do. Below it, my aunt had reacted with a thumbs up. No call, no explanation, just a thumb. I stared at the screen for a full minute before typing my reply. Understood. I'll respect that and step away from the family fund too. I didn't wait for a reply. That night, I logged into the joint account I had been silently maintaining for 5 years. It was the account that paid my mother's insulin, helped my father refinance the second mortgage, and kept Stephanie's car running when her checks were delayed. I removed my auto contributions and then closed the account. Exactly at 3:11 a.m., my phone began buzzing. By sunrise, there were 89 missed calls. The last voicemail was from my father. His voice was shaky, angry, and scared. What happened? The bank flagged everything. Are you okay? Why would you? I replied to his message with one sentence. I'm honoring your decision. To really understand why the message felt like a betrayal, you'd have to go back 5 years to Stephanie's second hospitalization. My father called me, crying in a Pharmacy First parking lot, saying, She's not going to make it, honey. They won't admit her without insurance. We're tapped out. That night, I emptied my savings and paid for the rehabilitation out of my own pocket. Stephanie seemed stable for a while. Everyone called it a miracle. But what they never said out loud, not even once, was that I had made it possible. No one offered to reimburse me, and no one even asked how I was doing. It didn't stop there. When my mother was diagnosed with a medical condition, I started covering her medication. My father's hours were being cut at the warehouse, and Stephanie was in and out of stability. Every time she crashed, they came to me quietly, desperately. At first, it was little things like $300 here just for the month. Then they asked if I could help set up something permanent, a sort of family emergency pool. I was 27, single, and working 80-hour weeks in finance. It made sense, I told myself. I could afford it, so I did. I set up the family fund in my name. I routed payments for my mother's prescriptions, Stephanie's therapy co-pays, and even the phone bill when they fell behind. They gave me access to everything, passwords, account numbers, and balances. Not because they trusted me, but because they didn't want to deal with it. They called me the responsible one, but they meant the convenient one. My life became a ledger of quiet sacrifices. Meanwhile, Stephanie spiraled again and again. She got a DUI in 2020, and I paid for the lawyer. She moved in with a man named David, and when she left him in the middle of the night, I was the one who sent her enough money for a hotel and groceries. I never saw a dime back. They never asked where the money came from. They never saw the line-by-line spreadsheet I kept to stay afloat myself. They never noticed that I downgraded my apartment, skipped vacations, or ate oatmeal for dinner more nights than I would admit, because I was supposed to be the financial firewall between them and collapse. For a while, I was okay with that. Then came the Christmas incident 2 years ago. Stephanie threw a fit because I said I couldn't buy her new tires after I had just paid her rent. She told my parents that I was making her feel judged. That night, I got a message from my father. Just try to be a little more understanding, Eleanor. She's in recovery. You don't know how hard that is. Something in me cracked. I didn't reply. Instead, I started documenting everything. Every dollar sent, every invoice paid, every excuse they made. I created backups, emailed myself statements, and collected screenshots. I wasn't doing it to hold it over them. Not yet. But to remind myself that it was real, and that I wasn't imagining the drain, the pattern, or the constant pulling without giving. Last month, it came to a head. Stephanie texted the family group, "Hey, I know money's tight, but could the fund cover a yoga retreat in Arizona? It's for my mental health. A yoga retreat for $3,200. I didn't answer. I waited to see what they would say. And my father, the same man I had pulled out of overdraft twice last year, replied, "Sounds like something you really need. Let's see what we can do." My mother chimed in with a heart emoji. That's when I realized they weren't just using me. They expected me to be used. They thought the fund was theirs and that I was some kind of silent donor. The gratitude had evaporated years ago, replaced by entitlement. But the final blow, the grenade in the room, came just 2 nights before the message. We were on a family call, a monthly check-in that usually turned into a therapy session for Stephanie with me as the invisible ATM. I tried to talk about my promotion to director at my firm, which came with a huge raise and massive responsibility. My father interrupted me mid-sentence. "Sorry, can we circle back to Stephanie's housing? She's not feeling safe in her current unit. They wanted to move her into a better area with my help." I didn't agree or fight. I just said calmly, "Maybe it's time someone else stepped up." Silence. Cold, stony, and offended. And then came that message 2 days later, "We think it's best if you step away for now." The thumbs up from Aunt Clara felt like a knife. They thought they were cutting me off. They didn't realize they were severing the cord to the only thing keeping their financial lives stitched together. I had been the quiet current beneath their lives. The moment I stopped, their lights went out. It took exactly 36 hours for the fallout to begin. First came the overdraft notices. Then my mother's pharmacy called me. Then Stephanie, the one who wanted space, left a voicemail that started in a whisper and ended in screaming, "Why would you do this? You knew I needed that payment." By Sunday morning, the texts were relentless. My father sent a barrage of voice notes, like a man unraveling. They exiled me from the family chat as if I didn't belong. The mortgage bounced. "I thought you handled the insurance." "The car is uninsured now." "What did you do to the utilities account?" The bank locked our checking, said there were multiple red flags. "You need to fix this." Fix this. As if I had broken something. As if I hadn't just stepped back as they had asked. The real problem wasn't that I had stopped helping. It was that they never realized how much I was holding everything together. Then came the family video call. My cousin Lucy set it up, pretending it was just to talk. But the second I joined, I saw their faces lined up in neat little rectangles, like a jury. My mother's lips were pressed so tight they looked bloodless. My father was pacing. Stephanie had tears streaming down her cheeks. It looked rehearsed. Aunt Clara sat smugly in a scarf and pearls, like we were in family court. "Why did you do this to us?" Stephanie started, her voice quivering. "You just abandoned us." "After everything I've done," I said. "You mean after I paid your rent, funded your rehab, and got mocked for saying no to your yoga retreat?" "That's not fair," she began. "Fair?" I snapped. "You want fair? How about this? For 5 years, I've covered your financial trail like a forensic janitor. I've cleaned up your messes, paid your overdrafts, and bailed you out while you posted inspirational quotes about healing and alignment. And the moment I hesitate, you exile me from the family chat like I was disposable." My mother finally spoke. "It wasn't exile. We were giving you space, too." "No, you weren't," I cut in. You were siding with Stephanie again, like you always do. You just found a polite way to tell me to disappear. So, I did. My father folded his arms. You didn't have to cancel the fund. I didn't cancel it, I said. I closed it in my name, funded with my money, and managed by me. That family fund was never a trust. It was a leash. His face turned red. We trusted you. No, I said. You used me. Then I opened the folder beside me and clicked to share my screen. A spreadsheet appeared. Rows and rows of payments, dates, and amounts. Every dollar tracked. Rent, medical bills, utilities, repairs, Stephanie's retreat that I almost paid, the overdrafts I fixed, the emergency dental for Aunt Clara, even the transportation receipts from the time I paid for my mother to get to the hospital at 2 a.m. during a panic attack. Wow, whispered Lucy. Who even keeps all this? Clara sneered. Someone who knew one day you'd gaslight her into thinking she made it all up, I said, my gaze fixed on the screen. Then I clicked to the final tab, which showed a running total of $87,000. Dead silence. My father stepped back from the camera as if he had been slapped. You've been keeping tabs on us, my mother said, horrified. No, I said. I've been surviving you. Stephanie lunged at the screen like a child having a tantrum. You're just bitter. You've always been bitter because no one gives you a gold star for being the good daughter. You want applause for acting like an adult? No, I said calmly. I just want boundaries, and I'm done being your financial safety net. That's rich, Clara muttered. You think money is the only thing that matters? No, I said. But it was the only thing you ever came to me for. Then I closed the spreadsheet, stared into the camera, and delivered the final blow. I've already contacted the bank. All joint authorizations removed. My name is no longer on anything related to your accounts. The credit cards are closed. The shared utility autopays are canceled. The insurance premiums, you'll need to re-enroll yourselves. You wanted me to step away. This is what that looks like. My mother gasped. My father's face turned pale. Stephanie looked like she had been shot. Lucy leaned back in awe. But I wasn't done. I also spoke to a lawyer, I added. You'll be receiving documents in the next few days. I'm dissolving any legal ties between me and the family trust that was never formalized, just in case someone tries to dip into my credit or open anything in my name again. You're overreacting, Stephanie shrieked. You're cutting us off. I'm protecting myself, I said. From now on, I'm not your plan B, not your fallback, not your free ride. My father looked broken but said nothing. My mother was quietly sobbing. Stephanie stood up and walked off screen, slamming something in the background. Clara reached forward and ended the call without a word. And I sat back, heart pounding, hands trembling. But for the first time in a decade, I wasn't afraid of the fallout, because I had nothing left to lose except the weight I had been carrying for too long. The silence after that call was almost eerie. For the first time in years, my phone didn't buzz with a, "Hey, quick favor," or, "Can you just cover this one thing?" There were no guilt-laced voicemails, no crying emojis, and no passive-aggressive posts from Stephanie about family who turns their back. Nothing. It was like I had vanished. At first, I thought maybe they had finally gotten it. Maybe they were learning to stand on their own. But I should have known better. Exactly 10 days later, I got an email from an address I didn't recognize, clearly a burner account, with a single sentence. You've ruined everything. Attached were screenshots of bills, Stephanie's eviction notice, a final warning from the Power company, and a denied credit card application with my name listed as the former co-signer. They were unraveling quickly, chaotically. People who are used to leaning on you don't fall gracefully. They crash and blame you for the landing. That same week, My mother showed up at my office. I was in a meeting. My assistant came in, wide-eyed. "There's a woman here. Says she's your mother. Won't leave." I stepped into the lobby, and there she was, pale and shaking, holding an envelope full of papers. "I didn't know where else to go," she said, her voice brittle. "Your dad's sleeping on the couch. Stephanie hasn't left her room in 3 days. The landlord says he's changing the locks next week." I didn't say a word, so she played her last card. "I raised you," she said, suddenly fierce. "I gave you life, and this is how you repay us." That's when I laughed. Not loud, not cruel, just hollow, like air escaping a cracked pipe. "You gave me life," I said. "And then you spent 30 years trying to convince me I owed you for it." She flinched. I stepped forward. "I didn't come to you at 22 and say, 'Please, let me be responsible for your dysfunction. Let me carry your debt. Let me save my sister over and over again while you nod and enable her. Let me sacrifice my mental health, my relationships, and my life just so you can avoid looking in the mirror.'" She said nothing, so I kept going. "You want help? Call a social worker. Call a credit counselor. Call the same system you said people like us were too proud to rely on. I'm not your bailout anymore." Then I walked back to my office. I didn't even check to see if she followed me. But that wasn't the end. A week later, I got a letter, not an email, an actual letter from the bank. The envelope was thick, the kind of thick that means trouble. Inside, a flagged investigation summary. Apparently, someone had tried to open a business loan using my name, my social security number, and the tax ID number linked to the family fund. The only reason it didn't go through was that I had closed the account days earlier, which triggered a fraud alert. The loan was for $80,000, and the business name was Stephanie Grace Recovery Services, LLC. I froze. That was not a real company. There was no LLC, no tax record, and no license, but the paperwork had been submitted, complete with a forged signature that matched mine. I called the bank. The fraud department representative pulled up the full packet, and when she read the co-signers, Dad and Mom, I sat there in stunned silence as she said, "Ma'am, it appears someone close to you tried to pose as your authorized financial partner. If you hadn't closed that fund, this might have gone through undetected. They hadn't just used me. They tried to shift responsibility onto me, quietly tying my name to a loan I wasn't a part of. And that's when everything sharpened. The way Stephanie suddenly wanted space. The way my parents encouraged it. The silence, the removal, the polite exile. It wasn't spontaneous. It was a setup. Get me off the fund quietly, keep my name attached, take the money, disappear, and let the bank come after me when things collapsed. They didn't just want my help. They wanted to keep me responsible without asking. When that didn't work, I became the villain in a story they had written to cover their own failed heist. I spent the weekend filing reports with the bank, the police, and the IRS. I submitted the forged documents and wrote an affidavit. I even handed over old texts that showed Stephanie asking about starting a nonprofit in my name. It took hours, but every keystroke felt like therapy. That night, Stephanie called from a different number, crying. I just wanted to say, I get it now. I let her talk. She didn't mention the loan or the forgery, just went on about how sorry she was, how hard things had been, and how we were still family. I asked one question. Did you know about the business application? Dead silence. Then the line went dead. I blocked the number. That's when the real shift happened, not in them, but in me. I started sleeping better. I stopped checking my bank app every night, fearing someone was quietly siphoning me again. I went to dinner with friends and didn't flinch when the check came. Then came the call from my Uncle Raymond, the outcast, the one they called unstable for cutting ties years ago. He found me through a social media platform. Saw what you did, he said. Heard about the fund. Heard about the loan, too. I didn't ask how. Raymond had always known more than he let on. You're not the first they drained, he added, just the first who shut the faucet off. And that's when it clicked. This wasn't just about me. This was generational. A long line of people who were groomed into servitude, into silence, into being the savior while everyone else drowned themselves in denial. They thought I was the villain because I stopped playing the hero. Let me tell you something about heroes. Most of them die broke and exhausted while everyone else claps at their funeral. Not me. I moved to a different city 2 months later. New job, better team, higher salary, no forwarding address. And one day, in the quiet of my new apartment, floors still bare and furniture still arriving, I got a message on a social media site from David, Stephanie's former boyfriend. Didn't expect this, it read. But thank you for helping her, even when she didn't deserve it. I wasn't the only thing she needed saving from. It stopped me cold. Not because I needed the validation, but because it was the first time anyone in that orbit had acknowledged the truth, that I had been saving them from themselves until I stopped. When I stopped, the silence that followed wasn't guilt. It was freedom. It's been almost a year, 12 months since I closed the fund, since the group chat exile, since the 3:11 a.m. phone call that spiraled into 89 missed calls, 1 voicemail, and a complete financial collapse they never saw coming. Since they submitted a business loan application using my name without telling me and tried to frame me for $80,000 in imaginary recovery services. I kept thinking I would feel empty after walking away, that guilt would sneak in late at night like it used to, whispering, "They're your family. Maybe you overreacted. Maybe you could have saved them." But the only thing I feel now is peace. Not the performative kind you pretend to have when you're holding back tears during Sunday dinner while someone jokes about how you're the responsible one. Real peace. The kind where your phone doesn't buzz with dread, where your money is yours, where your boundaries hold, and where you don't apologize for being free. They tried, of course. My mother emailed on Christmas Eve, saying the tree looked emptier this year and attached a photo of her and my father in the living room, smiling without their teeth, a performance for the lens. Stephanie emailed on her birthday in March, a 5-paragraph essay about how she was reclaiming her power, ending with a casual line about needing help covering her first and last month's rent. I didn't reply to either. I still check my credit score monthly. It's fine. There are no surprise accounts, no mystery charges. The alerts I set up after the forgery never triggered because now I own my life and I protect it the same way I once protected theirs. But here's the part I didn't expect. Other people started coming forward. Cousins I hadn't seen in years. Co-workers I'd barely spoken to. Even a stranger on a social media site who read a comment I left in a finance thread and messaged, "Your story. I think it happened to me too." It turns out there are a lot of us. The strong ones, the reliable ones, the ones who pay the rent, fix the chaos, hide the panic, and carry the weight while being told we're too cold when we finally ask for something. Back. The family vaults with no locks. Until one day, we learned to slam the door. Let me be clear. Walking away from my family was the hardest thing I've ever done. Harder than watching Stephanie relapse. Harder than deleting my father from my emergency contacts. Harder than choosing silence while they called me selfish, bitter, and cruel. But it was also the most necessary thing I've ever done. And the final straw, the one that made me sure I did the right thing, came just a few weeks ago. I was walking home from a late client meeting, on the same street I had walked dozens of times, and there, sitting outside the corner bakery, was Aunt Clara. Scarf, pearls, that same smug posture. She saw me and waved like we were old friends. I nearly kept walking, but I stopped. She looked me up and down. "You look well," she said. "I am." There was a beat. Then, with zero irony, she asked, "Would you ever consider setting something up again for emergencies?" I laughed long and low, and from somewhere deep in my gut. Then I said calmly, "I did. It's called my future." And I walked away. I don't know if they'll ever really understand what they lost or why I had to go. Maybe they'll rewrite the story, say I was greedy, unstable, ungrateful. Maybe Stephanie will write a blog post about toxic siblings and turn it into a podcast. I don't care, because the truth is simple. I'm not the villain in their story. I'm the one who finally escaped it. And in doing so, I gave myself the one thing they never could: freedom without conditions.